Well, we can broaden our discussion with Dalia Fahmy. She's an associate professor of political science at New York's Long Island University and joins us from Doha in Qatar. Thanks so much, as always, Dalia, for speaking to us. So the early opinion polls show that Mamdani is ahead of the other two candidates. But how much of his popularity right now is based on him being vocal about global issues like the war in Gaza, while also making promises to New Yorkers on universal childcare as well as affordable housing?
So Mamdani's appeal, especially among young New Yorkers, is because of his progressive platform that is about affordability, affordable housing. The cost of living in New York continues to skyrocket. Young people feel increasingly disenfranchised. My students, for example, graduate from university and are not only not able to find jobs, but housing is extremely expensive, with the average being about $3,000 per month. And so the initial appeal is someone who's talking to young people, who's addressing their issues, who's talking about social mobility, and that young people cannot really rise behind what's really happening in terms of the economic constraints in New York City. But there's also this international appeal of what does it mean to be a just citizen in the world? What young people saw for the past 2 years, a little over 2 years, images from around the world, but primarily from Gaza, and Mamdani talking about a level of social justice that goes beyond New York City, but throughout the world, I think really appeals to young people. I think the interesting thing is if you follow the polling numbers, he was actually up by 16 points just early in October, and we're seeing a narrowing of his perhaps perceived popularity and victory to just about 6% right now. Or the number split is about 6 right now. And so his appeal, yes, is for real social and economic issues, perhaps a little international, but the appeal is, I think, being tested by big money and corporate funding going towards former Governor Cuomo.
And that big money, there has been that criticism of Mamdani that he is so young, he doesn't have a lot of experience. He would be up against a Trump administration that doesn't want him there. Does he have the experience to actually get his policies over the line? Because he may win the hearts of New Yorkers on some of those policies, especially when it comes to the cost of living, but they are going to cost billions of dollars. He will need the help of business as well as the New York Senate.
Well, we've seen figures like Bill Ackerman and Michael Bloomberg and a lot of corporate funding that is fundamentally against Mamdani. And so I think the bigger question is, why is that the case? What does it mean that big money is behind corporate executives and maintaining the status quo and not really addressing the real issues that face New Yorkers today? And so that's a deeper philosophical questions that big money has to deal with about what the future of New York City is going to look like and what it's really for. In terms of his age and experience, yes, all of his primary experience has been in local governance, but the same accusations were levied at former President Obama, for example, first-term senator coming into the White House. And so I don't think age is the issue as much as a vision for the future that is fundamentally different. The former Governor Cuomo represents old New York in a kind of, if you will, gilded age of wealth and grandeur, while Mamdani represents what many young people feel is the kind of social economic ills of the moment that have yet to be addressed, not just by the government, both within the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party. We're seeing a big fissure. The big test is going to be how Washington responds. If Mamdani does indeed win, will New York City be punished for that? And so the relationship between local government and the national government, especially Trump, two congressmen, for example, want to withdraw Mamdani's citizenship or are questioning his citizenship right now. And so this is going to be a big test of New York and big test for the vision of the future.
It's very interesting that when it comes to people like Zohran Mamdani, things like his citizenship are always brought into question because, of course, if he won, he would be the first Muslim mayor, the first mayor of South Asian descent, and the youngest mayor in over a century. These points are also very significant to New Yorkers, many of whom come from immigrant backgrounds.
That is true, about 1 million Muslim New Yorkers. But I think beyond that, Mamdani's appeal was primarily because of his success of standing for taxi workers. When the taxi medallion cost went up from about $400,000 to about $1 million, and he went on that very symbolic hunger strike with taxi drivers, that was his primary appeal because they did win that in fact. And so the fact that he appeals to many young and actually older immigrants and what they face every day is really important. But I think talking about the overt Islamophobia that exists, the overt xenophobia and anti-immigrant sentiment that is coupled with the Mamdani image is really important for us to focus on, because New York City has not seen Islamophobia today. It's worse today than it was 1 week after 9/11, for example. And when you think about where this is coming from, it's coming from the top. The level of anti-immigrant sentiment, anti-Muslim sentiment coming from within the Republican Party, but really from President Trump, is quite telling of how do you create fear and stow fear among populations that are asking for a change, but the hook becomes New York is changing, which is America is changing, which it's no longer white. We're seeing a lot of aggressive xenophobia take over the country, and it's really unfortunate because it starts from the top.
Dalia Fahmy, I really appreciate your insight. Thank you very much.